And welcome back to this special broadcast on I-24 News. I'm Khaled bin David. It's the first day of 2024, but it's day 87 of Israel's war against Hamas. The terror group bringing in the new year with a 20-rocket barrage in central Israel. But the IDF still pushing deeper into Gaza today, killing a commander in Hamas's Nukhba force who played a key role in the attack on Kibbutz Kisufim on October 7th. The IDF also confirming the death of Kibbutz Be'eri resident Ilan Weiss, who was reported as missing since the day of the Hamas attack. Now, in the north, an IDF airstrike hit several Hezbollah positions in South Lebanon today, including a squad trying to launch a drone attack into Israel. That's as the Iran-backed militia continued its border fire just in the past few hours. Reports of a few soldiers injured there. And there have been some important developments on the home front. The Bank of Israel cutting the key interest rate by 1/4 point. The first rate cut since 2020 as the economy starts to sink under the weight of the war. And the Supreme Court's longer-awaited ruling striking down the so-called reasonableness law. It's the only measure passed by Parliament of the government's controversial judicial reforms that have divided the nation until October 7th, put politics on hold, at least until now. Well, let's go now to northern Israel with some breaking news from our correspondent Robert Swift. That border area continues to be hot, Robert. Some developments, it seems, just in the last few minutes. It seems more on the Syrian side. What's going on up there?
That's correct. So this is at the far eastern end of the border, unlike much of the activity we saw earlier today, which was elsewhere. Now, there's two incidents which have occurred. The first was there was reports about 10 minutes ago of 2 rockets being fired into Israel from Syrian territory. Now, the rocket alarms did not go off because the system identified that these rockets were landing in open areas. However, in the last minute, there has been 2 more alerts, again, rocket alerts this time, going off in the south of the Golan Heights. Now, we don't have any confirmation on what has caused this, but due to its location, it's possible that this is an additional occurrence of fire from Syria. Again, like I say, we don't have confirmation of that, but in the past, we have seen that rocket alarms going off in that part of the Golan Heights has tended to be due to Syrian fire. So we may see that that these 2 incidents, one occurring just a minute ago and one about 10 minutes ago, they may indeed be connected.
All right, Robert Swift there on the Israel-Lebanon border. Thank you for that. Still with us in studio, our senior diplomatic correspondent, Owen Alterman. And joining us now, retired Colonel Richard Kemp, CBE, former commander of the British forces in Afghanistan. Richard, always great to have you here. Let's look at that northern front, because it seems to be no let up, maybe even an intensification by Hezbollah, even though Israel is intensifying its strikes within Lebanon at Hezbollah targets, and certainly intensifying its rhetoric doing it. The message, as we've been saying, it does not seem to be getting through to Hezbollah. What more has to be done? Is there more the international community could be doing? They're trying to say Amos Hochstein, the U.S. envoy in Lebanon, supposedly searching for a diplomatic solution. But is there more pressure that has to be put on Hezbollah for that to even have a chance?
Well, I think there's little, in my view, little chance of a diplomatic solution pushing Hezbollah north of the Litani River where they should be, or even non-existent, even better, but at least north of the Litani River. I think there's a little chance of that. We don't know, maybe. But I think the message really should be going directly to Tehran, and it's not just about the Hezbollah, it's also about the Houthis as well, another Iranian proxy. So I think it's very clear who's behind all of this, and that's Iran, and that's where the diplomatic pressure should be, and not just diplomatic pressure, but very, very severe sanctions as well. I think ultimately, my guess is that ultimately it will require significant military force to deal with Hezbollah rather than diplomatic action.
All right. Well, you mentioned the Houthis, and in fact, the sinking of 3 Houthi attack vessels by U.S. forces in the Red Sea just the other day seemingly has opened up a new phase in the fight against the Yemeni rebels to disrupt shipping lanes in one of the world's key waterways. Now come reports that the UK will take part in military actions by the naval coalition that was established by the U.S. The British Foreign Minister David Cameron tweeting yesterday that he had spoken with his Iranian counterpart and, quote, made clear that Iran shares responsibility for preventing these attacks, giving their long-standing support to the Houthis. Now, Iran, perhaps in response, has now reportedly moved one of its warships through the Bab al-Mandab Strait into the Red Sea. Here's what the spokesperson for Iran's foreign ministry had to say today.
Activities by the United States and Britain in the Red Sea are in line with the role those two countries have in intensifying instability and insecurity in the regional waters, especially in the Red Sea. Such moves will not help the region's stability and security at all. Their acts will raise regional and international concerns about the security of the region.
There is breaking news this evening from pro-Houthi media in Yemen. They're reporting explosions in the Red Sea, reportedly from exchanges of live fire between some of those Houthi attack boats and U.S. warships stationed in the area. So things do seem to be heating up there, Richard. But how far do you think this U.S.-led coalition, how far is your country, the U.K., prepared to go beyond defensive actions, such as we saw, and we did see that taken, to efforts such as striking Houthi positions within Yemen or blockading one of the Yemenite ports that the Houthis control?
I think that's overdue, and I think there needs to be strikes against Houthis in Yemen, including their missile launchers and their radar sites and other coastal installations they have. That should have been done before now. This is just showing timidity and weakness, and it encourages further and further attacks by the Houthis. I don't think the defensive actions of the coalition is going to cut it, frankly. And also, I think if there is severe military action by the coalition against the Houthis, that also sends a message of resolve to Iran, which could reverberate into Lebanon as well, and perhaps will be some form of deterrent against further action there. But there is a weakness in Washington over this, and I believe if the US decide that they're going to carry out serious offensive action against the Houthis, Britain is going to follow suit. I think it's very unlikely Britain would not do that, but unfortunately there aren't too many other countries who are willing to take part in the coalition. Not even
those countries most directly affected. It's the Arab states like Egypt, Saudi Arabia, Jordan, who are the ones that really are the ones hurt, certainly more than Israel, by what's happening there in the Red Sea.
Right, and it's only, as far as I know, it's only Bahrain that's willing to take part in the coalition now. Sorry? Among
Arab countries.
Right, exactly. And you know, I think one of the problems there is that this is associated, of course, with Israel. It's portrayed as being an attack on Israeli shipping. And many of the Arab countries, even though they no doubt are right behind Israel's offensive against Hamas, do not want to be publicly and openly associating themselves with Israel by joining a coalition that's seen to be working, albeit it isn't really the case, seen to be working as part of this Israeli operation.
I mean, listen, there's obviously the problem of free riding, right, of all of these countries that have everything to gain by traffic going through the Red Sea. A lot of them, of course, border the Red Sea, and Egypt has the Suez Canal, which is badly hurt, right, if the shipping lanes are blocked. At the end of the day, I tend to be optimistic here. This is a problem that the United States is not going to allow to go unsolved, can't allow to go unsolved. The economic hit over time is too great, right, with what, 10 to 15% of global shipping going through these lanes. And for that reason, I continue to be confused about what exactly the Houthi strategy is, what their end game is, what is in their minds propelling them to take a step like this. If the Iranians had some view that this was going to force concessions or force the United States to put pressure on Israel to allow this to open, it was, I think, quite clear from the beginning that was not the most likely scenario, to say the least, and it's not the scenario that's playing out.
Well, you could argue it's having the other effect, and it's forcing countries like the United States and the UK, which wanted to tamp down and keep the conflict in Gaza from spreading regionally, to force them to act and involve them in a regional conflict. But Owen, Richard, it seems like Iran is doubling down on this, if you want to put it, somewhat questionable strategy. As I mentioned, they've moved one of their warships now into Red Sea waters. That's going to be seen as a clear provocation by this U.S.-led coalition. So I agree with what you're saying, but Iran just seems to be thinking on a different mindset here.
And I don't understand them. Richard has to say it seems to be a big strategic mistake. The balance of power in the region and the world is not going to allow for this. This is taking on the entire global economy. This is not just shooting at lonely Israel.
Richard thinks it was a mistake from Iran.
I definitely think that the reason this is going on is because Iran still believes, and rightly or wrongly, that President Biden's #1 objective is the JCPOA, re-establishing JCPOA, appeasing Iran, which he's done all the way along, including since the 7th of October massacre. And I think they're reading it that way. Whether they're wrong in doing so or whether they prove to be right in doing so, we'll have to see. But I think it really does indicate the need for very serious aggressive action against the Houthis in order to at least send a message to Tehran. And the next step is Tehran.
Right. Well, we'll see if that messages get through in Washington. By the way, I'm just going to note that, I mean, there was a Washington Post report last month, criticism. There's some defense Pentagon officials criticizing the White House for not being more aggressive in responding to attacks by Iranian-linked militias in Iraq and Syria on U.S. forces in that country. So that dynamic is playing out not just in the Red Sea, but in places like Iraq and Syria. Gentlemen, stay with us. I'm going to want to bring the discussion back to Israel and back to not the war itself, but one of the consequences of Israel's war against Hamas. Now, October